What you are about to experience is out of this world. Politics, history, and of course, a lot of entertainment. It's time to rock it with the Docket.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Kyle Dockery with the Dockery Docket. We are here with our very 120th episode of the Dockery Docket. I'm excited to be here, and I hope that you are excited to be here as well. And if you are excited to be here as well, make sure to go down below, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, so then you never miss one of my videos. So there are certain situations that happen in our world that are more than just political. They are something that can affect both Democrats and Republicans. Hurricanes, forest fires, and natural disasters are all times when people can stand together and support each other. However, there are times when natural disasters happen and the government will try and cover up the severity of that situation to either avoid a panic or get people to go back to work. For example, after the horrific day of September 11th, people had to go down to the World Trade Center, Ground Zero, and clean up all that debris. And the workers that were assigned to do this job were nervous that there were going to be different chemicals in the concrete of the World Trade Center that would be toxic to them and could lead them to have different health effects down the road. The EPA came out and said, listen, we get your concerns, but everything is 100% fine. Just get back to work and clean it up. Well, guess what? A few years after that, people started to get lung diseases and lung cancer because of the chemicals from the concrete in the buildings. It was a terrible situation in an already terrible situation. Then, coming closer to my hometown of Flint, Michigan, there were many people in the local government of Flint claiming that the water was safe to drink, even though it was coming out brown and full of lead. Obama even came to Flint and did a political stunt about the water, not just once.
We invest. Can I get some water? Come on up here. I want a glass of water.
Get a bottle. Bottle water.
I want a glass of water. Everybody settle down. This is a feisty crowd. Thank you. I really did need a glass of water. This is not a stunt.
But twice.
You know, generally I have not been doing stunts here, but, you know.
And then he claimed that when he was younger, he might have eaten a lead paint chip. Take a look at this video.
I am sure that somewhere when I was 2 years old, I was taking a chip of paint, tasting it, and I got some lead.
It seemed like he was mocking the people that were affected by this horrific event that was causing hundreds of thousands of kids to have developmental issues. It also doesn't help that the people in both the 9/11 situation and the Flint water crisis situation were mostly ignored in their time of struggle and stress and need. There are many examples of the government sort of brushing things under the rug, and we are definitely seeing that happen again in East Palestine. As ever since this train derailed in East Palestine, there have been people all over social media that are posting pictures of this event and asking, why on earth isn't the media talking about this? Why isn't there international outrage? Is anyone going to talk about this? Where is Greta Thunberg, Al Gore, Leonardo DiCaprio, all these big climate change people? Why aren't they outraged? And is anyone going to get the guts to actually talk about this? Well, for me, the answer is yes. I will talk about the accident that happened in East Palestine, Ohio, because the media is refusing to talk about it. So there was a Norfolk Southern Railroad train that was traveling from Illinois to Pennsylvania. This train was in Ohio in East Palestine, which is actually pretty close to the border of Ohio and Pennsylvania. This train was carrying a toxic chemical called vinyl chloride, which is used to make PVC pipes and can also be used as a coating for different wires. The chemical is also known to be be very toxic and also extremely flammable. Then a terrible situation happened as 50 of the 150 cars on the train became derailed, causing a collision that ended up creating a gigantic fire. One of the first responders explained that the fire was like opening up the doors from hell. As he said, it was hot, and the flames were shooting up into the air at 100 feet. So now there were just a few of these cars that were actually on fire in this accident. Now I can't confirm if all of these 50 cars that were in this accident were carrying vinyl chloride. Either way, it caused a huge fire that was affecting the train cars that were holding vinyl chloride. Luckily, there were experts on the scene that realized that the internal temperatures of some of the cars carrying this vinyl chloride was becoming unstable, and if the temperature continued to rise, it would explode, causing more injury and maybe even more train cars to explode and catching on fire as well. So the experts decided to do the last thing that they actually wanted to do, as they had to blow holes in all the train cars that held vinyl chloride, spilling it into the air. As according to my research, 5 of these tanks were blown open, and then the chemicals were burned in what is known as a controlled burn to make sure that there wouldn't be any more explosions. As I already mentioned, this was the worst case scenario that these experts didn't want to do, but they were running out of options and had to prevent an explosion. However, vinyl chloride was released into the air, and vinyl chloride is a very toxic chemical. This chemical was going into the ground, into the water, and now that it was being burned, it was going into the atmosphere, which mixes with hydrogen and creates hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is also a very deadly chemical, and you know who knew that? The Germans in World War I, who used chlorine gas which mixed into the air and turned into hydrochloric acid. This gas was so toxic and so effective that when it was released into these different trenches, the people wanted to get out. This gas had serious health effects for the soldiers, as in World War I, long exposure to this gas led to destruction of tissue and could lead to death. If you survived, it could lead to severe lung damage, and low exposure resulted in coughing, vomiting, and eye irritation. This is why the soldiers in World War I wore gas masks, because it was so deadly and could cause so many health risks. Isn't it crazy that we now have a chemical that was used in World War I, and now it is just being burnt in Ohio, and it seems like no one is paying attention to this? People are getting sick, and animals are dying. There are so many videos of chickens dying and fish dying, along with foxes or animals that are outside, because they are breathing in this toxic chemical. So the government knew that the area close by the release of this gas was going to be the most affected. So they issued an evacuation order from people 1 to 2 miles away. This, of course, was a good thing, and it made people that were close to the explosion safe. However, the problem is that when chemicals like this are released into the air, it goes into the jet stream, and that means that the chemicals can spread throughout the state and even throughout the country. So even though people aren't in East Palestine, they are still feeling the effects, as there are people on social media claiming that they could smell the chemicals from 10 to 15 miles away. One woman even claimed that when she went outside, her eyes started to burn. People have been complaining of headaches, which happens when you breathe in high levels of vinyl chloride or breathing it in for a long period of time. This is just the short-term problems, as according to the Daily Mail, the people of East Palestine and the area around it could have a chance of getting liver disease, nerve damage, and a weakened immune system. Along with that, people with high exposure could be at higher risk of liver cancer, along with brain and lung cancer. This is why I was shocked when the evacuation order was lifted on February 8th, as authorities claimed that the air and water was safe, and they did not find any contaminant levels above screening limits.
What? What?
Wait, hold on just a minute. This situation just happened, and thousands of chemicals were dumped into the air. And we are now telling people to go back to work? Everything is fine? I mean, the railroad workers were even working on the broken railroad in the same week with no masks or protection at all. I get it, you want people to clean up this mess, but can't you give them something to protect them from the vinyl chloride? These railroad workers could be in serious danger and are at risk of all these diseases of breathing in vinyl chloride. The authorities and experts are also claiming that the water is clean to drink, which waterways are another way of these different chemicals to spread to different areas of the country. The chemicals right now are in the Ohio River Basin. Those chemicals could move into the Tennessee River Basin, and then to the Mississippi River Basin, and so on and so forth. This could result in the chemicals to get into the water supply, people drink them, and then they get sick from those different chemicals. And then there are videos of people throwing rocks into the water and bubbles are rising to the surface and it looks like a rainbow because of all of the chemicals. This is not a safe situation and it is definitely not normal at all. Here is a video from the new senator of Ohio, J.D. Vance, dragging a stick across the bed of a creek. And just look at the water.
You come here and let me just show this to people. I don't know if you're going to see this on camera, but watch this. Just see that chemical pop out of the creek. This is disgusting. And the fact that we have not cleaned up the train crash, the fact that these chemicals are still seeping in the ground is an insult to the people who live in East Palestine. Do not forget these people. We've got to keep applying pressure. That's how we're going to fix this problem. Thank you.
There is no way that the government can claim that this is safe. I'm telling you right now, mark my words, there are going to be commercials claiming if you or a loved one have been affected by the East Palestine disaster, you may be able to receive financial compensation. Why can't they fix this situation right now? I mean, who is in charge of this situation? Now, this train was in control of the transportation department, so there are many people that are blaming Pete Buttigieg for this crisis. Now, I believe you can't blame Pete Buttigieg for everything. He wasn't the one that ruined the railroad tracks, leading to the train to fall off the tracks and release vinyl chloride. However, it is the response of Pete Buttigieg that made people upset. As after the situation happened, you would expect him to come out and be like, I am praying for the people of East Palestine. I am working with the president to make sure that our railways are safe. Like, that's it. That's all he had to say. All he had to do was mention that this situation was happening and that he was looking into it. Heck, he could have even lied for all I care. And Pete Buttigieg even had the perfect opportunity to do this, as he had a little speaking engagement. So put in your bets now, did he talk about the situation in East Palestine? No, of course he didn't. Instead, he talked about how he was very concerned about construction workers being the same color as the community involved. Just take a listen to this.
We have heard way too many stories from generations past of infrastructure where you got a neighborhood, often a neighborhood of color, that finally sees the project come to them, but everyone in the hard hats on that project looking like, doing the good paying jobs, don't look like they came from anywhere near the neighborhood.
Right.
Do you know how annoyed this makes me? Just imagine how annoyed the people of East Palestine are. Instead of focusing on the trouble that these people are going through, Pete Buttigieg is talking about race and gender. It makes me feel crazy because this is the entire Joe Biden administration. They are incompetent and don't understand what the average person is going through. They wear their victim cards on their sleeves and show it around to everyone, and they say, wow, look at me, I'm the first black one-armed man to sharpen a pencil. Here's the thing. I don't care that Pete Buttigieg is gay. The problem is that he had no qualifications to do the transportation secretary job. I wish that in South Bend, Indiana, where he was mayor, he was included on the transportation department. Or he was charged by the governor to be the state's transportation leader or something like that. Apparently, being gay and proposing on a train doesn't help when a tanker is spilling toxic chemicals into the air and people are suffering with the side effects. Once again, we can't blame this all on Pete Buttigieg, but his response was shallow at best. Okay, so if we can't blame Mayor Pete for this situation, who else can we blame? Well, that's easy. Who have the Democrats blamed for everything since Joe Biden stepped into the Oval Office? Well, Donald Trump, of course. As there was a rule back when Obama was president to require all trains that were carrying hazardous or flammable materials to have ECP brakes, or just emergency brakes just in case something went wrong. Donald Trump cut that regulation in 2017. So, this makes sense. Trump cut the regulation, which led to the train to not have the right kind of brakes, which made this accident worse. As if they had the right brakes, they would have been able to stop sooner. Now, it is important to have different safety regulations on trains, but apparently it would have cost millions of dollars, and Trump, along with the railroad company, didn't want to pay that price, so they decided that it wasn't needed. The kicker in this situation is that this law was repealed back in 2017. And it is currently 2023, or 6 years ago. And nothing to this magnitude has happened. And if this new regulation was so important, why didn't Joe Biden put it back into place? Apparently, Joe Biden as well thought that it wasn't needed, because a huge accident like this hadn't happened for the last 6 years. Now, trains might have derailed in those 6 years, as that seems to happen a lot, but from what I have seen during the Trump administration, nothing like this happened. Now, I'm being serious. If there are any situations that did happen under Trump like this situation, please let me know, because I am very curious, and I could be wrong. I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong about this situation. The only time I could find something like this happening was in 2012, when there was a train that derailed and spilled 20,000 gallons of vinyl chloride. It wasn't burned like in East Palestine, but it still ended up in the water supply and the air, and the effects of the city of New Jersey where this happened are still being felt today, as people have had permanent lung damage and some people are even suing. And guess what? That exact same situation is going to happen with East Palestine. Okay, so we can't blame Pete Buttigieg and we can't blame Trump for everything. Could we blame Joe Biden for this situation? Interestingly enough, there is evidence that Joe Biden put pressure on these different railroad companies. Let me explain. So there was a railroad strike that was going to cause extreme damage to the economy. And if the trains aren't running, then we can't get gas or wood or vinyl chloride to make different products that we need. Joe Biden knew this, so he had to make sure that the trains were back up and running. Luckily, there was an agreement reached, as Congress passed a bill that forced these different railroad unions to accept the government's agreements. 8 out of 12 of the companies agreed with the terms, but some unions were angry that it didn't include more sick leave. So why is that important? Well, these train workers are getting less days off because of the new agreement, and it is making their job unbearable. According to the New York Times, workers have fewer days off, and even more irregular schedules than they're used to. This has led to these different companies to make longer trains, which are harder to operate and more prone to derailments. The railroads have cut back on inspections. They have deferred and outsourced material that was traditionally done by union workers. And they're continuing their push to reduce the crews of these super long trains from 2 people to only 1 person. All of this means that people are working hard and management is trying to cut corners, which means that they aren't doing inspections and the trains are getting longer because they are trying to get their jobs done quicker, but as you can tell, that's not very safe for the workers and for the people that are living in these different communities where the train get derailed and spill vinyl chloride into the atmosphere. Now, once again, you can't blame Biden 100% because he was just trying to prevent an economic collapse, which is a good thing, but it caused the company to hurt. Which leads me to conclude that the train company, I believe that Norfolk Southern has some blame on their hands as well, as according to the Lever, the company helped kill a federal safety rule aiming at upgrading the rail industry's Civil War-era braking system, according to documents. These aren't the Obama brakes. These are older than those brakes. Along with that, documents also claimed that the industry lobbyist limited regulations on trains that were carrying hazardous compounds. This made the trains that were in Ohio exempt from the classification of high hazard. The company knew that these different chemicals that were hazardous to people and the environments around them were terrible and dangerous, but they cared more about the company and the lobbyists. It is truly a terrible situation. That's why in the end, we need to make sure that no matter who is to blame, someone needs to clean this up. This is why after first denying FEMA from going into Ohio, Joe Biden finally gave FEMA the okay to go in after the Biden administration was pressured into doing so. Which is annoying because FEMA should have been in Ohio once this accident happened. But no, because this administration doesn't do anything until they are pressured into doing something. It is the same with the balloon crap. Biden doesn't do anything until people start calling him weak. That's why I believe that this administration is incompetent, and the incompetence is going to get people killed. As there are more trains that are derailing all over the country. There was a tanker in Oklahoma that was spilling chemicals. A truck in Tucson, Arizona fell over and was leaking toxic gas. And in Detroit, a train became derailed. Luckily, no chemicals were spilled, but still, something is going on, and something has to be fixed. And right now, the people to fix it are either Joe Biden or Pete Buttigieg, or in the future, Donald Trump if he wins re-election. Something has to be done to make sure that the trains can run on time, and not spill toxic waste everywhere. And with that, I just want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Dockery Docket. And until next time, like my mom always says, be good, be kind, be loving. Goodbye.